I will call this meeting of the School District 72 Board of Education to order, and we will begin with Chairperson's remarks. Good evening. I acknowledge on behalf of the Board of Trustees that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Likwitah people. I am John Kerr, Chairperson of the School District 72 Board of Education. In attendance this evening are Vice Chair Kat Eddy and Trustees Joyce McMahon, Richard Franklin, Susan Wilson, and Shannon Briggs. Also in attendance are Superintendent Dr. Jeremy Morrow, Associate Superintendents Morgan Kyle and Phil Sismic, as well as Secretary Treasurer Kevin Patrick. Present also are Natalie Crawshaw, Assistant to the Secretary Treasurer, Jennifer Patrick, Manager of Communications, and providing technical support is Jonathan Carrier, IT Technician. The board is meeting in person using the appropriate COVID-19 protocols under advice from the District Health Officer. However, in-person attendance for the public is not possible at this time except for previously scheduled presentations, so this and future meetings will be available to the public online unless and until the District Health Officer directs the board otherwise. Please note that there is a 20-second production delay between the live event that you are viewing and the meeting participants. The question and answer function is open for questions on agenda items for this meeting. Questions that are posed during the meeting will be addressed at the end of the session. At every meeting since I've been chair, I have addressed the issue of COVID-19 and how important it is to the board that the safety of our students and staff is ensured. To that end, the district has followed the directions of the District Health Officer. Over the past 21 months, there have been numerous exposures to the virus in our schools, but there has been no known transmission of the virus. This is due in part to the measures that we have implemented, including sanitation and the mask mandate. With the emergence of the new Omicron variant, which appears to be more transmissible, it is more important than ever to maintain our vigilance and to do all that we can do to protect ourselves against infection. Recently, the province made the vaccine available for children ages from 5 to 11, and parents can now choose to ensure that their children are vaccinated. I urge parents to do so for the safety of your children and families now that the holiday season is approaching. On November 25th, the Cedar Replacement Committee, Secretary, Treasurer, and Superintendent took part in a 20-minute Zoom meeting with the Minister of Education, Deputy Minister of Education, Assistant Deputy Minister for Finance, Executive Assistant, and MLA Michelle Babchuk to advocate for the replacement of Cedar Elementary. I believe that the Minister listened carefully and took our request seriously. The next step will be approval from Treasury Board, which will announce its plans for the upcoming year in February. There is no guarantee that our advocacy will be successful with the tremendous expenditures the government is facing after the extreme fire season, the damage from recent floods in the Fraser Valley, the interior, and the Malahat, as well as the demand for new schools in areas of increasing population. But it is our hope that the government will recognize the need to replace this school for reasons of equity and the poor condition of the building. This is not the time to relax, and the board will continue its efforts to advocate for a new Cedar Elementary. If you have not already done so, please write to the Minister of Education to support this initiative. Last week, Vice Chair Eddy and I attended the BC School Trustees Association Trustee Academy in Vancouver. Sessions ranged from the newly introduced surplus policy, leadership management standards, and reimagining the future through education, among others. Vice Chair Eddy will provide more detail later. Sure. Finally, this is the last public board meeting of 2021. I would like to take the opportunity to thank our students for their continued efforts to achieve in these uncertain and difficult times. Your efforts will stand you in good stead in the future. And to our staff, for all their efforts to provide our students with safe and meaningful learning opportunities over the past year. You continue to make a difference in the lives of our students. To all of you, I wish a happy, safe, and joyous winter or Christmas break and a successful and fulfilling 2022. Okay, we'll then move to Dr. Morrow, Superintendent's remarks.
All right, thank you very much, Chairperson Kerr. First, I want to thank our staff and parents yesterday for their ability to pivot early in the morning to respond to a snow day, and I know that the students seem to be able to respond to the announcement of a snow day with no difficulty whatsoever. But we are grateful that everyone was safe today, and I know the buses were a little late, but thanking our community for their patience. It is a busy time in schools. There's a lot of excitement and a lot of learning that's taking place, and I've had the pleasure over the last few weeks to visit quite a number of schools, and it has been wonderful to share in some of the learning opportunities that are taking place. I participated in classrooms, in the hallways, on school grounds, and even interacting with students in the office. Such a nice place to be. And when you're there in schools, when you're not in schools every day, you really get to observe the magic of the ordinary, just the ordinary day that is so special, and I've been appreciative of that, as well as the additional energy that I'm particularly noticing in elementary and middle schools as winter break approaches. I want to share too that many of our elementary schools are working on sharing their winter concerts and celebrations with their parents online this year. And again, just noting, as Chairperson Kerr mentioned, with COVID, there's been so many changes with COVID protocols and so on. And I'm thankful for the extra efforts that schools and staff have consistently made to still find creative ways to celebrate. The Knights of Columbus Food Hamper is once again running a food drive at our schools until the middle of December. This is the 48th year that the Knights have organized this effort, and they are asking for donations of non-perishable food items, new toys, or cash to contribute to these hampers. And I'm sure there are a number of families whose cupboards have already been raided, and those students have been bringing those canned goods into schools this week. Just to echo some of the comments that Trustee Kerr mentioned just around some recent COVID exposures in our schools, and I want to take this opportunity just to remind all of the members of our school community that daily health checks still remain one of the most important things that we can do to help prevent the spread of COVID in our community. And I'll finish my comments tonight by just acknowledging that when school started in September of this year, I think we had high hopes that COVID wouldn't be such a dominant topic. And that hasn't been the case. It still continues to be an important consideration in our schools. But I want to thank and acknowledge our staff, our students, and our extended school community for their patience, their understanding, their cooperation with all of the protocols. And we wish everyone a wonderful and well-deserved holiday break.
Thank you, Dr. Morrow. Okay, we'll move to the approval of the minutes of the meeting of November 16, 2021. And the suggested motion is that the minutes of the meeting of November 16, 2021 are hereby approved as circulated. We have a mover for this. Okay, Trustee Eddy, Trustee Franklin. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? The motion is carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Hearing none. Are there any additions or alterations to the agenda? Okay, then we'll move on. And we'll move to approval of the agenda. And the suggested motion is that the agenda is hereby approved as circulated. We have a mover for that, Trustee McMahon, Trustee Briggs. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, the motion is carried. And Vice Chair Eddy, a report on the decisions from tonight's confidential board meeting.
In our confidential meeting this evening, we discussed matters of legal and staff relating and staffing. We have concluded our agenda for this evening and will not be returning.
Thank you. There are no public or agenda submissions, so we will then move into our educational submissions. And the first submission will be the international program update, and that will be Mercedes Haydock. Would you please come and join us at the table?
Thank you.
Oh, you've got your computer, okay.
I do. I have a little presentation for you all.
I'll just get it started.
Yes, thank you, Spark. And then how do I do it? It's in the right spot?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Perfect, wonderful. Well, honorable trustees and colleagues, it's wonderful to be here in person for an International Student Program update. Thank you for having me tonight. I've got a couple of little updates, some positive news for you from our program, so I'm happy to share that with you tonight. First thing, that maybe is not such a big deal for us internally within the school district, but it is important to me in my role when I'm out in abroad and speaking with my partners abroad, is how we represent our program. So we were formerly Campbell River Schools International and had been that brand for quite a while. I was constantly facing questions of, are you a private school, are you a public school? And I didn't feel that it adequately represented what I'm promoting. And I am promoting and telling stories about our school district, about our teachers, about our students, and about our amazing community. And so we are now known as the Campbell River School District International Student Programs, which is a wonderful change for us because it does represent better who exactly we are. So this September, we welcomed 58 students into, actually it was actually the end of August, we welcomed them. And we have 12 more arriving at the end of January. We were supposed to have 12 students departing at the end of January, but 10 of them have extended to full year, which is very flattering for us. We will have a total of 50 students at the end of the year for an FTE of 57. I typically work in 57, or FTE, it's sort of where my budget, you know, Kevin, the FTE that we work in. Homestay is different, it's more of a head count, which would represent the 70 students. And just to give you an idea of historically where we've been, if we can just ignore last year and go back to 2019-2020 school year, that September, I think we were at about 55 FTE at that time. And previous to that, we were about 45 FTE, and then the year before that, about 40 FTE, and then in the high 30s. So we've seen some nice consistent growth, other than the blip of last year, over the last 5 real years of our program. So where do our students come from? So this is where they come from this year. Predominantly Western Europe, 82%. Sorry for the small numbers, but if you look at the pie chart, 82% of our students are coming from Western Europe, predominantly Germany and Spain. 18% of our students are coming from Asia, mostly Japan and Taiwan. And then this year, none from Latin America, and that's simply a reflection of the fact that our students from Brazil and Mexico were not ready to travel for this September due to their COVID situation. So in the past, it's not been quite this breakdown of students. It's more like 65% from Western Europe and I'd say 30% from Asia, but Asia wasn't quite ready to travel this year as much. So hopefully for September 22, we'll see more students coming from Japan and Taiwan so that we can have a more diverse program. We are, the German students love our program, and it always has been a large market for us, and it continues to be a large market for us. So I wanted to share a little bit with you about why Campbell River. So there's a couple internal and external factors for that. Internally, students from Europe and particularly Germans love the nature that Campbell River has. Many of them have actually traveled here before with their families. Those camper vans that you see in the summers, those are sometimes our students, and then they come back years later to study here. We're starting to get quite well known for the high quality homestay experiences that we offer, as well as programming. I'm going to tell you some stories about Kerry High Senior Boys Soccer that went on to win Island Championships with a couple international students on the team. So really our students are having amazing experiences here, and I'm seeing their friends come the next year, or the younger brother come, or younger sister. So those are the kind of referrals and word of mouth experiences that we're seeing. External factors, well, the island really saw low COVID numbers. This is for this year. Like in the past, we had full-time in-person school this last year, and we had low COVID numbers, so that was a positive story. People felt comfortable coming to the island, and specifically Campbell River. And as well, you should know externally, Australia and New Zealand were set to welcome international students for January, but I think they've backed off from that. So that's going to be a continued external factor that will assist all the programs on the island and in BC. So now the fun part, some of the stories. What have our kids been up to? So starting with the end of August, when we had our 58 students arrive, most of them were expected to quarantine, but then in August, the federal government changed those entry restrictions, and so fully vaccinated students did not have to quarantine, and we wound up having only 6 students that quarantine. So we ran 2 tracks for our 2-week orientation. We had in-person activities with some of the students, and then we had virtual orientation with the 6 students who were in quarantine. You might wonder why some students were still in quarantine. Please remember that some countries do not have access to vaccines the way that we do here or the way that Germany did. So that was a factor for some of our students from Taiwan and Thailand, as well as in Spain, students who previously had COVID are only given 1 dose of the vaccine, and then they are considered fully vaccinated. So those students would come here and not be considered fully vaccinated. We had, for the first time this year, the leadership classes at both Carey High and Timberline provided student ambassadors. It was a wonderful opportunity for our international students to get a tour of the school from student ambassadors at both schools. At Timberline, they helped them choose their lockers, helped them with the locks, which, by the way, takes about 20 minutes for an international student to figure out how to work those locks, because it's not something that they have seen before in their daily life. So the student ambassadors from the leadership classes were a wonderful welcome for our international students. For 8 weeks through October and November, the Carey High Sports Leadership Group, the sports leadership class, runs International Sports Night. It's entirely student run. They welcome all the international students from both schools for a variety of games, activities, sports, every Wednesday night. We've been doing this for a few years now, but I think it's such a wonderful, inclusive welcome for our international students, and we see a big turnout. 30 students will come to this to the sports night at Carey High. I already mentioned the Carey High Senior Boys Island Championships. This is from when they won here in Campbell River. We had 2 German students and 2 Japanese students who played on the team, and I am so grateful to our coaches and our students who are so welcoming to our international students. It's such a wonderful experience for these kids to go and be a part of a team like this, and then to win the Islands, and then to go on to become second at the Coastal Cup. Really a fantastic experience for our students. Volleyball, Carey High Senior Girls, who also did very well at the Islands. 2 of our international students, number 12 and 13 there, they brought the height to the girls volleyball team this year, and they had a great time playing with that team. Timberline girls as well. We had an Italian student and a Spanish student joining that team and playing with them. And it's the kind of thing that really instantly gives them friends. They're practicing several times a week. It's such a wonderful experience for those students. Sorry for the poor quality image, but if you walk into the main entranceway of Timberline, you will see the framed photo of this wolf. This is one of my German students, an incredible artist, and she gifted her drawing of the wolf to Timberline, which they've had framed and mounted there. The art teacher, Mr. Harley, was so excited about her work. He shared it with the staff. Everyone got very excited about it, and she gifted that drawing to Timberline. So it's not just sports, it's also arts where our students are contributing and finding value in their programs. It was so great to return to activities this year. So exciting. We took 4 boats of students out whale watching. I guess this was the end of September. We had a beautiful day, more humpback whales and orcas than I've ever seen on a whale watching trip. It was fantastic. We've done movie night. Vancouver trip at the end of November did get postponed to January, but it was fantastic. We could rebook that for the students once hopefully there's no more fuel shortages and flooding issues. And then of course we have a Christmas party this Thursday with our students. It was booked at the ice rink, but we've had to juggle at the last minute and find some other space to accommodate us with the strike there too, but that's okay. We're really good at pivoting quickly to find other things. But it is just really so fantastic to be back doing activities with our students. For anyone who visits the Festival of Trees, a small group of our international students, we do this every year. Usually organizations in the community will sponsor a tree for us. So this year it was CR Lawyers. My students got together, they plan the tree, they make the decorations, and then they create the theme for the tree. So this was the diversity and inclusion tree. They painted flags of all the countries and worked together. You have students here from Germany, Italy, Spain, and all working together to create a Christmas tree for the Festival of Trees. So please do check that out. And just a couple images of everyday life with host families, horseback riding, trip to Tofino. Challenges. A program like ours always has challenges, and they do continue in these days. We've had a change last week where entry requirements for our students will change for, well, as soon as the government can figure out the details, but they've always required a negative PCR test prior to boarding their flight in their home country, but now they will require a PCR test upon arrival and then to self-isolate for a few days until they get those results. I'm really excited for the Christmas season. They can work out all those kinks in that process, and then our January arrivals, it'll be nice, smooth sailing, hopefully 3 days of self-isolation, and then they'll be able to join school. Luckily, at the high school, Q3 starts February 2nd, so we actually have a couple days there that they may not even miss a day of school. Onboarding host families, well, we had a surprise extension of those 10 students, so we've been onboarding new host families. We've never in the history of the program really had trouble finding host families. It's a little different out there these days. A, people want to travel and don't want to be tied down, which is totally understandable, and B, for some people there's some low energy around taking on that added responsibility, which is also understandable in these times. So it's a little bit more challenging, but I'm happy to say we have host families for all of our students. We are looking for extras, because for us, when we have extra host families, it means that if we have to make any adjustments, if there's any family emergencies, then it's easy for us to do that. And finally, the motto in our office is the world continues to provide us opportunities to grow our adaptability and resiliency every week, every day. And it's wonderful, it's wonderful. So that's the update from International.
Are there any questions for Ms. Haydock? Go ahead.
I just have a comment for you, Mercedes. A fantastic job navigating chaotic world situations to continue the international program and continue to grow it. I know that you've got a great team of people that work alongside you to provide awesome experiences, not only for the students traveling here to participate in our program, but for the families that get to meet them and hang out with them and learn a little bit more about their lives in their home countries. So nicely done. Well done.
Well, thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
And I was a bit remiss in not talking about my team, because really it's not just me, it is my team. And one thing I forgot to mention too is we did hire a full-time admin assistant that started this summer. So that's new for our program. To have that position has been amazing for us, and we have an incredible person who's Karen Giesberg, who's in that role. We have an amazing homestay coordinator who's so supportive to our students and our families, and as well as our academic advisor, Kim Sticks. So I'm very fortunate to have such an amazing team.
Richard?
I just wanted to say this program, I think, is a real highlight for me to see kids coming from all over the world to come to Campbell River, and I think it's of such benefit for them, but it's also a benefit for our Campbell River kids to be able to interact with people from other countries. I think it's a wonderful thing. It's not something that Campbell River District does to make money. It's something that Campbell River District does to enhance the experience of our students and the experience of students from around the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for your comments. I agree. I see it every day. I see it 2 doors over, my neighbors. They're the grandpa to an international student who was here, I think now 5 or 6 years ago, and she came back for the wedding of the daughter she lived with, or the granddaughter, I guess. So, you know, those connections, they never go away. They're there for years and years, and they're it's really amazing opportunities for our families and our students. Mm-hmm.
I would say that it looks like even just a brief sampling that the students that have come to Carey High and Timberline have really added to the life of the school. Those 4 students who played on the championship soccer team, the young German lady who was the artist, and I'm sure that there are many other examples of those students coming and contributing to the life of their schools, adding to the life of their schools, and that is real value added. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it's honestly my honor to do it. It's a privilege to provide these opportunities. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, then we will move into the learning support services staffing, and that's Ms. Ewing.
I don't have a slideshow, just paper. Good evening, honorable trustees. Nice to see you this evening. That's a tough act to follow. So that was lovely to see, and so wonderful to see all those opportunities for our students. My presentation's not as riveting, but still important nonetheless. So yeah, I'm coming here today because our learning support service requirements have increased from the 2021-22 preliminary budget that was approved by the board. I have, I believe you have a copy of the student changes. So, I mean, the overall change you can see there is about, well, $913,320. That wasn't forecasted. So we have done a few, I guess, minor changes or additions to some pieces that we were able to shift or do small increases. But we are asking the board to support 3 additional positions. Those would be a 0.55 literacy intervention teacher. And this teacher would be supporting the strong literacy skills for those students who scored lower on the DIBEL screener that was implemented across the district. It's to support early intervention, and we would be looking at a pilot school to look at using the DIBEL screener and teacher interventions with students, which we just want to point out is different than the role of the literacy coordinator, who are building capacity of teachers to do sort of that tier 1 level intervention work. The literacy intervention teacher would still work with teachers, but their work would be to support those tier 2 and tier 3 students. The second position would be a behavior resource teacher. We currently do have a behavior resource teacher in learning support services, but we would be looking at hiring a second teacher to target our middle and secondary students, supporting students with social emotional well-being and act as a liaison between district, school, and then our outside agencies. And then the third position is we've called an outreach teacher, and this would be targeting those students that have not yet attended or have low attendance this year. We have seen that there are some students, and whether it says here as a challenge as a result of the pandemic, mental health issues, addictions, who are either have not returned to school or their attendance is low, and we're concerned. We want to reconnect those students with school, and so this position would support that. And so those are the 3 positions we're looking for, and I don't if there are any questions around any of those.
John?
Sorry.
When you're ready.
Support.
I even noticed.
Oh, okay.
We can't see you when you're there.
Sorry, and you were going to do a preamble, weren't you? You told me that.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so this is kind of unique, because we will set our budget based on our estimates in the spring for a preliminary budget. And so typically when September comes around, we do expect changes. Sometimes they'll actually be less, but because we've committed to the preliminary services, we'll continue with that, but sometimes it goes up. And in a normal year, the board hasn't been requested for additional funds at this time because those changes are relatively small. This year, the change was significant. And so overall, our district enrollment didn't go up quite as significantly as this did. So it has increased the demands and needs in the for student services or for learning services. Now this in an ideal world, we knew about this in spring and they could have been fully staffed. So there's a little bit of catch up at this bit. But it has been identified by Learning Services and discussed with SMT that these are needs and it's been supported. But there is a little bit of a risk by approaching at this time. So we have identified, you'll notice that the expected increase of grants is much more than what the request is. And this would basically be my advice to not fully spend that amount. Because there will likely be other changes coming forward to the budget. Now, we don't get the final grant schedule until, well, I think until December, where we know for sure where it's gonna be. So we are expecting a drop in some of our rural geographic location grants. So we're expecting some of those to drop, but we don't know exactly how much. My preliminary estimate is it's definitely not gonna drop $913,000. So based on that combination, definitely feel that trying to spend the whole thing is too risky, but I would be comfortable with the request as it currently sets based on the increased grants and the needs, that this can be supported by the board. Because it wasn't approved during preliminary, and it would be too late to approve these additional services in February, we are going to ask this time for the board to support an increase in the budget of $168,000 at this time. Now, one other thing with the FTE positions is those are part-year positions, because a full-time cost for teaching for the full year is about $110,000. So these are things that will go in now. When we do our estimates for next year, obviously based on this, we'll be able to work in and have a more planned approach to staffing for next year. So this is really just looking at this year based on what we know at this time. So we will be looking for a motion as well, but if you have other questions.
I just have a.
Okay.
So will these new positions be servicing the entire district? So looking at the outreach teacher, will they be working at a high school, middle school, and elementary school level? Or will they be specific to a school or a student age range?
The outreach teacher was going to be specific to our middle and secondary schools. That's where we're seeing more of a need in that area. I'm not sure if it's because we do have the e-bond option sort of at that K-9, which some of our families have chosen, or if they're still not prepared to come back to school. But we are seeing that those numbers at our middle and secondary. So that one specifically would be targeting middle secondary, again, with the behavior research teacher, because we already have one behavior research teacher that would then focus on the elementary, then the new person coming in would be focusing on the middle secondary. And then the literacy intervention teacher would be supporting one elementary school that through our data point of the DIBELS, I guess, and some of the other data pieces would be the school that would be supported. That would be Cedar Elementary.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a motion. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess we then have a motion to hire the 3 positions for the remainder of this year at a cost of $168,300. So
That was everything, or yeah?
Mhm.
that's what we got. So is that pretty much addressed your concern? Okay, so that's the motion. Would somebody care to make that motion? Okay, Trustee Wilson, Trustee McMahon. Any discussion? Trustee Franklin?
Where does this money come from?
I think it came from that extra $913,000,
Mhm.
but I was referred to.
Right now we're expecting the learning services grants based on the additional students go up.
Okay,
We just don't know about what other changes.
okay.
Exactly.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Okay, the motion is carried.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you
For our
very much.
students and staff.
Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Sounds great.
Okay. Okay, moving on, we will move on to Trustee Eddie, Board Committee appointments for 2022.
Awesome. So I'd really like to thank trustees for taking the time to have some conversations with me regarding their desires for board committee appointments. As of this time, none of our professional committees are looking to change. So we are going to roll over the committee structure from last year, which will be posted on our website, should anybody be interested in understanding who the trustee representative is on each committee.
Okay. All right, so we will move to item 11B, and that will be the Provincial Council Representative election. So Trustee Eddie, would you take the gavel symbolically or literally?
So for all the trustees are aware of these pieces, but the Provincial Council, for the public, the Provincial Council and BCPC are elected at the board table. So this is the process, the point in the year where we decide on our provincial representation. So the first motion is regarding the BCPC representative. And I am calling for nominations from the board for a representative to the British Columbia Public School Employers Association for 2022. Trustee McMahon?
I'd like to nominate you, Trustee Eddie.
Thank you,
In which
Trustee.
case, I should probably take the gavel back.
We should have the gavel back, John.
Didn't really want to let it go. Okay, so Vice Chair Eddie has been nominated for the position of Board Representative for BCPC for 2022. Are there any further nominations? Okay, that's the second call for the third and final time. Are there any further nominations? Hearing none, I declare that Trustee Eddie is elected by acclamation as the Board Representative for BCPC for 2022.
Thank you. Yay.
Did we mention it's a bargaining year?
I know that it's a bargaining year.
Okay.
That's why nobody else ran.
Thanks for your vote of confidence.
I nominate you.
So moving forward to the secondary provincial position,
Just a minute.
alternate representative. So I would like to ask the table if anyone would like to sit as the alternate for the BCPC Council. Sure, I'll take a nomination.
Duck under the table now.
Okay, Trustee Wilson, were you going to nominate someone?
No, I have a question. Is this, I believe that Trustee Hagan expressed some interest in this.
Yeah.
Trustee Hagan does sit as an alternate now.
Okay.
Actually, Trustee Hagan sits as the BCPC representative prior to tonight's meeting, and I sat as alternate, so I don't think there would be much problem with switching the roles, but I haven't discussed it with Trustee Hagan.
I guess we can come back to that at the next select,
Yeah.
the next
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah, okay.
We will do that next meeting, so when we have a full complement here.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So moving on to BC Provincial Council representative. So I call for nominations from the board for the board's Provincial Council representative to the BC Columbia School Trustees Association for 2022. Is there any nominations? Trustee McMahon.
I'd like to nominate Trustee Wilson.
So Trustee Wilson has been nominated to the position of board representative for BCSTA for 2022. Are there any further nominations?
Do you accept?
I accept the nomination.
I guess we should probably do the process properly. So Trustee Wilson accepts her nomination. Are there any further nominations? Seeing none, I'll ask a final time. Are there any further nominations? So hearing no further nominations, I declare Trustee Susan Wilson elected by acclamation as the board's representative for BCSTA for 2022. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And looking for an alternate representative. So, appoint or elect an alternate. So would someone like to nominate an alternate? Or is there someone who would like to step forward as an alternate for the provincial council?
I'll volunteer.
That's Trustee Kerr. Trustee
Okay.
Kerr has stepped forward as an alternate for provincial council. So that will leave Trustee Wilson as the lead and Trustee Kerr as the alternate.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. And that's it. Can I bang the gavel?
Sure. I need my paper back.
Oh.
Okay. All right, so we will move then on to item 12, and that will be school completion rates. Dr. Morrow.
Yes, thank you. So tonight's brief presentation is just going to publicly share our graduation data, and tonight, again, the sharing of data is a reflection of this board's request, expectation, and commitment to share our student data and be accountable to trends in our district. So I want to share, this is 6-year graduation completion rates, again, just released from the province. We have data for residents and non-residents. Non-residents, we just had the wonderful presentation about international students. So 70 of them come, and then often they leave, but they are registered as students within our system, and they impact our graduation rate. So that's why there's a decoupling for resident students. So you can see, again, just these are 5-year trends. So from 2016-17 school year to 2021, and last year's overall 6-year completion rate shows some marginal improvement from the year previous, and overall result of 85.2%. We're looking at when we delineate, and this has been a priority for this board, around seeing equity in achievement results and opportunities for our Indigenous students. So there's obviously work remaining to be done. And I will just orally report if that's green. The achievement results last year for our Indigenous students show a graduation rate of 68.6%, which is an improvement of almost 10% from the year before, higher than the 5-year average. But obviously, I know the board will say that that's insufficient and not enough, and that continues to be our work to shorten the disparity in those outcomes. Our ELL students, we have quite a number of ELL students in our districts. These are our English language learners, and there's some really encouraging data trends that you can see, 17% improvement from the year previous, and almost a 9 to 10% improvement from any of the previous 5 years. And then lastly, another area just to note, and again, it's just showing data trending in the right direction where we have our students of diverse needs improving to 69.7%. Again, I know we are looking for equity across all measures for all students. And so while there's encouraging trends tonight and some really positive graduation rate outcomes and data that show that we're on the right trajectory, there's also a clear indication of work that needs to be done. And I think too, I just want to acknowledge, anytime we look at student data and we look at percentages, we are talking about individual students and their outcomes and their life opportunities. So I am thankful that our teachers, our school-based teams, our principals and vice principals aren't looking just at big numbers. They're looking at the names of students who need an intervention or need to be tracked in a different way to help them be successful and meet the outcomes and expectations of the system, and to prepare them for future life chances. So I think that uptick this particular year shows that effort reflected in those results of school-based staff really using student data as part of the conversation, and using that data to figure out who those kids are that are not on the right path, and figuring out how to support them in a good way. So lots of work to be done, but also some positive trends that we're starting to see emerging around student completion rates. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Trustee Franklin.
I'd just like to acknowledge the work of all the staff who have worked so hard to achieve these very promising results, and I'm very happy with the progress that has been made. regard to our strategic plan. Things are going very well.
With two observations. I suppose I'm looking at one, I guess not a negative observation, but it's a concern to me that in our groups there's anywhere from a quarter to a third of our students are not graduating. That's the downside. The upside is that, as Trustee Franklin said, we're moving in the right direction and hope to see improvement in, further improvement in the upcoming years.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sure one data piece that's not on there, which is the 5-year grad rate. So last year's 5-year grad rate for Indigenous students was 73%. So we're hoping to see next year, when we look at a 6-year grad rate, we'll be looking at hopefully a number above 73%, which is starting to gain we're starting to see improvement around that disparity in outcomes. So I think we'll hopefully continue to see those positive trends, but we'll continue to be committed to that, and that is a reflection of the board's strategic.
thank you. Okay, we'll move on to business administration and finance warrant number 5. And there's a suggested motion that finance warrant number 5 dated November 30, 2021 be accepted as presented. And I believe this is it.
Just speak to it or a little bit?
Sure.
This is for November, which just ended. So
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with how quickly, so they've been working, finance staff have been working really, really hard to get caught up. And there were a couple that were batched quite late when they were working on other things. But they're caught up, and not only are they caught up, but they're really focused on, our Assistant Secretary Treasurer and our staff are really focused on trying to get this to the board expeditiously. Now, one of the challenges with getting this prepared is there's a lot of work that's required to go in. There's a lot of numbers, and although we love numbers, it takes time to get them organized and in place to represent them and report them to you. So this right here is the way the traditional report. But what I wanted to mention is for the next finance warrant, we're going to include 2 finance warrants because we actually have software, financial system software that can produce some of the schedules that are part of this. And part of the work that Renee's been doing is to make sure that that's accurate and it accurately reflects and pulls into this. So in the next one, we're going to include 2 finance warrants. We're going to include the traditional one, and we're going to include the system generated one. So the fonts will look different, but the information is the same. So we're included in both in your agenda. So if you have a chance to please take a look at both of them. And we'll be asking at the next time this comes, because this may not come for the next board meeting, but we'll see if the board's okay with converting to the system generated one, which of course saves time and will help ensure that you'll get it more promptly in the future. So yeah, I'm really happy and proud of this because it's a lot of work that they've been doing to try to make things more efficient. That I just wanted to give you sort of a notification before you get the 2 in your agenda next time. That's what that will be about. So.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
Secretary Treasurer Patrick. Okay, could we have someone move that motion, please? Trustee Franklin, Trustee McMahon. All those in favor? Okay, the motion is passed. Okay, next one, the committee reports, BCST Trustee Academy. Trustee Eddie.
So BCSTA Trustee Academy, due to COVID, it's been a couple of years since provincial trustees have been together. There was a lot of excitement in the room. It was really great to meet with colleagues. The attendance was significantly lower than most years, with only about 200 attendees, when typically there would be about 450. It was held downtown at the Bay Shore, so they had great convention rooms that comfortably provided enough distance for trustees to feel comfortable. There's a lot of focus this year on understanding that this is the last year for trustees' terms and that we are coming up to an election in October. So challenging trustees to really summarize the work that they've done over their terms, and a recognition that the learning curve for new trustees is quite steep, and that it would be a shame to lose the learning that we've gained through our term in governance of our system, just because we may have a turnover at next election. So there was a lot of conversation around that. We did get a chance to meet Minister Whiteside. Minister Whiteside did come and present, speaking a lot about really the flooding in the Fraser Valley, and sending their deepest condolences to all those schools, making promises that once the floodwaters recede, that the province will step in with assistance to rebuild those schools that were damaged. I believe there were 5, 2 significantly damaged and another 3 quite damaged. So there is some discussions around rebuilds. She also discussed how we expand and support and invest in Indigenous programs in support of the BC tripartite. And then we had some really great inspirational speakers, one of whom was a robotics scientist, a young lady, early 30s, who always dreamed of being an astronaut. And she did everything in her power to be as qualified as she could be when the call that went out about once every 25 years, or twice every 25 years came. So she did all this STEM education, and when the call for astronauts finally came from the Canadian Space Agency, she applied, and she was one of 4,000 applicants. She got down to the final 500, and a skin condition is what ended up ruling her out, not the qual. The final 100, and a skin condition is what finally ended up disqualifying her from being an astronaut. She talked about how shattered she was because she had focused all of her energy on this one dream, but in that point of deconstruction, that there was great personal learning for her and ways that she could create new opportunities through optimism for teams to solve super wicked problems. So that is her whole job now. She is employed by a company that does robotics design for things that have never been done before, like the Canada Arm and the wheels on Land Rovers that they're going to send to Mars next year. She was very inspirational. We had some great speakers from the Indigenous community that did a lot of sharing of traditional teachings and knowledge, and really presented with a lot of courage and a lot of sincerity around a genuine request for governors in the education system to start thinking hard about how to make the system as equitable as we possibly can for Indigenous learners. So a request and a sharing of knowledge. And finally, we were met at the final session of the weekend. The advocate for children and youth and families was there, Jennifer Charlesworth, presented, and she spoke to a couple of stories of situations, very sad situations where a child didn't have an opportunity to feel as if they were loved and genuinely cared about, and ended tragically. So she asked us to focus on building relationships as school communities, to build relationships with those children that are often unseen, and be that child's person so that they have a connection point, which may very well save them from a tragic end in the long run. It was a very powerful conference with some really powerful ideas. It was very thought-provoking for me personally, and I hope to move forward on some of the pieces that were suggested as a board, and wish you all could have been there.
Just in addition, with the opening speaker on Thursday night talked about him growing up in an abusive household, and it was a multi-generational residential school trauma, where basically his answer to everything is violence, and spent time in jail, did all the, I guess, the stereotypical bad stuff, but things started to change for him. I believe he was probably in his early 40s. His early 40s, and he connected with somebody who was like a mentor to him, who cared for him, and that made all the difference. That made all the difference in the world to him. So he now brings his story to people to say, you know, how powerful it is when you have somebody who's in your life who really cares for you. And the second thing is just in addition to the story about the young robotic engineer. She's probably known to you because she was the young lady from Victoria who became famous by inventing what's called the hollow flashlight, which was the flashlight that provides light, turns the heat from your hand into energy to provide light. And when she got down to the final 100, they said, do you have any skin conditions in this? As Trustee Eddie has said she did, and her skin condition was that I think it was right here on her head, she had a little patch, maybe about the size of a quarter, and she had white hair.
Oh.
And she thought it looked pretty cool, you know, like everybody thought she was pretty cool, but that skin condition, the small skin condition, the size of probably a nickel or a quarter, disqualified her from the program. It wasn't a major thing. It was just, you would think it was just a minor thing, but you know, it was.
Wow.
That shows you how high the standards were. But it was, yeah, it was really certainly worthwhile attending.
Yes.
It was like drinking from a fire hose, though.
Kind of.
It really was, yeah. Okay, thank you. So we will go to the Cedar School Replacement Committee update. I gave you a brief overview of that in my chairperson's remarks. We started off by acknowledging that the minister had many demands on her time because of what was happening, and this meeting wasn't happening at an ideal time. During our presentation, she had already seen the video that Ms. Patrick had put together. A very powerful introduction, I think. And we talked about the need for the replacement of the school through the lens of equity. And she seemed to catch on to that, get interested and ask questions about it. So we left, it was only 20 minutes, and Superintendent Morrow presented some data on student achievement. But one of the things that really made an impact was Secretary Treasurer Patrick making a presentation just on the condition of the building and how much had gone into it, and the fact that it was at a 0.71, and all of the work that had been done on it over the last few years had brought it up to a 54. Now, the lower the number, the better condition. So it went from being very poor just to poor. But Secretary Treasurer Patrick pointed out that at 0.54, which is a poor condition, that's the best that school is ever going to be. So, you know, we certainly got her attention. And I would like to, I'd be remiss, I suppose, if I didn't thank MLA Babchuk for her efforts to get us FaceTime with the minister, because I think the letters that came in were powerful. She received a lot of letters, and we have to thank the community and, you know, for that. But to actually get the time and to make the presentation to her and to have her ask questions and you know, to focus in on that one thing was very powerful. But as I said in my remarks, we can't stop now. We have to keep our pedal to the metal on this one. Even if we don't get it this year, I think this board needs to keep working on it and see if, you know, if in the near future something can happen. So, I'm not expecting the world, but Trustee McMahon?
I agree. I think it's an unfortunate time for us to put forward our case for Cedar, given the other pressures on the ministry's treasury right now and in the next years probably. But I think we've learned over the time that we've been involved with the Ministry of Education that nothing happens very quickly, and that there's some case to be made for building momentum over time, and so I would agree. Any disappointing news that may come from this request is not a case for stopping our advocacy. I think the need will remain the same, and our advocacy needs to match that need.
We have to make it hard for them to say no. So anyway, so that's where we are. I think we probably won't be doing anything until January, but then we'll get moving again in January. We'll probably have to have another meeting and just see where we go from here.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move into item number 15, and this has to do with communications committee. I'm going to revise that a bit if you don't mind. I think that it would be good for the board to send thank you letters to the groups who supported us, not the individuals, but to QP and Sierra DTA who wrote, and also the CRPVPA and the city. They wrote really good supporting letters. I think that they had an impact. I would like to also perhaps work with Trustee McMahon and Trustee Franklin on putting a letter together from the people who were at the meeting, specifically towards the Minister of Education, thanking her for giving us the time and for, you know, like meeting with us, and to MLA Babchuk for all her help in getting us in front of the minister. But then when we sort of get a draft of that, we can pass it on to the communications committee and also onto our manager of communications. And then, you know, really fine tune it and then get it out to those people. Okay? All right, thank you. Okay, so are there any questions on the agenda items for this meeting?
Yes, we've had a question come in from our CP president, Ms. Andrea Craddock. It's with regards to the student achievement or school completion rate, sorry. So the question is, great to see improvements in graduation rates. Do we know what interventions are helping to see this positive change? And will there be more resources committed to those interventions?
Good question for the first one. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think we've done anything completely drastically different, other than using the data that was available to us to really identify which students required some additional tracking supports at the school through the school-based teams. So, but we haven't added resources. We've just reprioritized them and ensured that those students are getting those supports. I think some of the additional supports that were presented tonight would be with the intention of catching even more students.
Are there other questions?
No, there's no other questions.
Okay, well, I think people have had enough time to ask the questions, so I'm going to ask, wow, this is the first for a long time. Could I have someone move adjournment?
Oh.
Okay. Trustee McMahon. All those in favor? We are finished for the evening and for 2021.
Yes.
Everyone, I hope you all have a great holiday, and we'll see you again in January.
Thank you.